What you're about to hear are true stories that most people in the funeral industry won't talk about. Stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about what happens after we die. Stories that will keep you up at night. Hey there, strange seekers. Today we're diving into the dark and mysterious world of funeral homes, morgues, and the professionals who work there. These aren't urban legends or creepypasta tales. These are real experiences from the people who spend their days working with the dead. And trust me, you won't believe what they've seen. But before we begin, hit that subscribe button and ring that bell because you won't want to miss what's coming next week. Now let's begin with a story that changed how one funeral director sees reality itself. Story 1. The Impossible Knock. In 1987, veteran mortician James Henderson was working late at his funeral home in rural Maine. It was just another quiet night of paperwork when he heard it, 3 sharp knocks coming from inside one of the preparation room coolers. Now, Henderson had been in the business for over 20 years at this point. He knew all the usual sounds, the buildings settling, the ventilation system, even the way different materials contract in the cold. But this was different. He tried to ignore it at first, but then it happened again. 3 distinct knocks, and they were getting louder. Story 2. The Vanishing Visitor. Let's jump to 2009 to a small funeral home in Arizona. Embalmer Sarah Chen was preparing for a viewing when she noticed something odd in her security footage. A woman in a blue dress had entered the viewing room at 2:43 p.m. Normal enough, except no one had signed the guest book at that time. Chen checked the footage again. The woman could be seen clearly walking in, approaching the casket, and then nothing. The camera shows her standing there for nearly 6 hours without moving, not a single shift in position. When Chen fast-forwards to 8:52 p.m., the woman simply vanishes. Now, where were we? Ah yes, the sign-in book. When Chen checked it later that night, she found an entry from 1967, written in faded ink, Margaret Wells, 2:43 p.m. The same date as the current viewing, just 42 years earlier. And the description of Margaret Wells from 1967? A blue dress. In 2015, a morgue technician in Chicago named Michael Rivera started noticing something bizarre. Every Monday morning for 6 straight weeks, he would find a single red rose on the same autopsy table. The security cameras never caught anyone placing it there. The doors were always locked. The alarm system was never triggered. The mystery deepened when Rivera discovered old records from the 1950s mentioning the exact same phenomenon, right down to the specific table and the peculiar scent. But what he found in those records would lead him down a rabbit hole of decades-old unsolved deaths, hidden love letters, and a truth stranger than any fiction. Now, remember James Henderson and those mysterious knocks? When he finally got up the courage to open that cooler door, what he found changed his entire perspective on death. The body inside was exactly as he'd left it, except for one impossible detail. The deceased's wedding ring, which had been carefully documented during intake, had somehow moved from their left hand to their right, and it was warm to the touch. But that's not even the strangest part. When Henderson contacted the family the next day, they broke down in tears. You see, their loved one had always joked that they would find a way to let everyone know if there really was an afterlife. The signal? 3 knocks and moving their wedding ring. In 2019, a group of night shift workers at a large urban morgue in Toronto started hearing something unusual. Every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., they would hear what sounded like distant singing, a chorus of voices performing what seemed to be an ancient hymn in a language none of them recognized. They set up recording equipment, brought in language experts, and even had audio engineers analyze the sounds. The recordings revealed something astonishing. When played backwards at half speed, the singing contained clear words in a dialect that hadn't been spoken in over 400 years. These stories represent just a tiny fraction of the unexplained phenomena reported by death care professionals. People who entered their field as skeptics, trained in science and medicine, only to encounter things that defy rational explanation. Perhaps these experiences tell us something profound about the nature of death, or maybe they simply remind us that there are still mysteries in this world that science can't explain. Either way, they make us question what really happens in those quiet hours when the living sleep and the dead, well, maybe they don't rest quite as peacefully as we think. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss our next episode about the strange things found in ancient Egyptian tombs that historians don't want you to know about. Leave a comment below if you've ever experienced anything supernatural in a funeral home or cemetery. We'd love to hear your stories. Because sometimes the strange seeks you back. But wait, we're not done yet. You guys have been sending us so many incredible stories in the comments, and we've verified a few that will chill you to the bone. Story 5, The Phantom Procession. In 2021, funeral director Maria Delgado was driving a hearse back from a service in rural New Mexico when she saw something impossible in her rearview mirror. A line of cars following her, all vintage models from the 1940s, all pitch black, all with their headlights on, despite it being mid-afternoon. She pulled over to let them pass, but when she stopped, the cars vanished. Here's where it gets bizarre. When she checked the funeral home's records later, she discovered that exactly 80 years earlier, to the day, a funeral procession of 12 cars had disappeared on that same stretch of road during a dust storm. How many of you have ever seen something unexplainable on a lonely road? Drop a comment below. We read every single one. Story 6, The Morning Meeting. This one comes from a morgue supervisor in Boston who wishes to remain anonymous. Every morning at 4:45 a.m., the motion sensors in their facility's main corridor would trigger. Security footage showed nothing visible, but the temperature in that section would drop by exactly 15 degrees for precisely 3 minutes. After months of this, someone finally thought to check the facility's history. Turns out that for 30 years, the previous supervisor had held mandatory staff meetings at exactly 4:45 a.m. His office? Right where the temperature drop occurs. It makes you wonder, do our routines leave imprints that echo through time? Are we all just creating our own hauntings for future generations? Now we've got some questions for you, our strange seekers. We've noticed patterns in the stories you've been sending us. Why do so many of you report seeing shadowy figures in funeral home mirrors, but only in the bottom right corner? What's with all the stories about clocks stopping at 3:33 a.m. specifically? And perhaps most intriguingly, why have dozens of you reported smelling lilacs in morgue elevators, regardless of the season or location? If you've experienced any of these phenomena, timestamp your comment with when it happened. We're building a database, and you won't believe the patterns we're finding. And speaking of patterns, next week we'll be sharing the story of the whistling mortician, a case so bizarre that it changed state laws about funeral home security systems. Plus, we'll reveal what really happened to James Henderson after his encounter with those mysterious knocks. Trust me, the full story is far stranger than what we shared today. Some say he's still hearing those knocks. They just come from somewhere much, much closer now.